Trump's courage is inspiring all of us America First warriors more and more every day. He truly is the man in the arena, ready to stand strong, stay in the fight, and do what's right to get America back on track. And with that, I also have a message for the unhinged radicals on the left. You thought all the lawfare would take down Donald Trump, but it's only making him even stronger. Starting with the corrupt Mar-a-Lago raid nearly 2 years ago, the American people have been witness to this destruction of our legal system.
Woo! Okay. That terrifying clip comes from the latest Kimberly Guilfoyle, straight from 1984 podcast or show, whatever you want to call her thing. Aside from it's just her drama, okay? But aside from the creepy voice, the rising anger, the strange blank face, well, all of it. What I found super bizarre is that for those of you who are listening, hopefully, and those who are sitting, if you can see it on the video, sitting on the shelf behind her as she rages about Donald Trump and his victimhood and the retribution that's coming, sitting behind her is her happy little book, The Princess and the Pup, her children's book that she just released about the same week that Kristi Noem released her book about shooting a dog. She's literally pitching fascism with a book about how kids can be brave when they have a friend and a little puppy and make them safe. It's a weird dichotomy, but it struck me as I prepared for this week's show, because in this week's show, we talk about that. This book is being published by Brave Books. It's an imprint that came out of the movement to ban books across the country that many of these Christian nationalists found offensive. So these people found a way to replace children's books and others in our libraries and our schools with their MAGA-fueled Christian nationalist themed books. And they've got such accomplished authors as Kirk Cameron and anti-transgender fifth place swimmer Riley Gaines writing books for them, along with the usual suspects, Dana Lash, everybody else. And of course, Kimberly Guilfoyle. Now, why do I mention this? Well, a lot of this started off in a suburban enclave in Texas between Dallas and Fort Worth called Southlake. And I've got a guest who just released a new book sitting right here called They Came for the Schools, about that journey and where it's taken us to the point we've got Fascism Barbie Kim promoting Donald Trump's bravery, sitting in front of a pink book about happy little girls need puppies. So with that, needless to say, it's going to be an interesting ride. It's an interesting show. It's been a hell of a ride to get here. Let's get on with the show. I am Fred Wellman, host of On the Wise with FP Wellman. You're here on the Midas Touch Network or wherever you find your best podcast. Let's get on with the show. Oh, man. Welcome. I am still Fred Wellman, host of On the Wise with FP Wellman, right here in the Midas Touch Network, wherever you find your podcast. I don't know how you find us. I'm just glad you do find us every week. Another great show. You saw Kimberly Guilfoyle, I cleverly call Fascism Barbie. She's doing her little thing with her book. And why does that tie into what we're talking about? Well, that's the best part. I've got a guest. We were just reminiscing about how long I've known Mike Hixenbaugh. Mike was a cub reporter at the Virginia Pilot covering the Navy. I was a veterans advocate, and we met probably 10, 12 years ago. He is now the senior investigative reporter for NBC News, has been named a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Glad to have that. Won a Peabody Award for his reporting on the battle over race, gender, sexuality in American classrooms. They Came for the Schools. This is a new book, which we're going to talk about. Winner of the prestigious Lucas Work in Progress Awards. Mike, all these awards, congratulations, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the Midas Touch, brother.
It's good to reconnect.
It is, man.
Been a while.
We've come a long way. We were just, for the viewers, we were saying, oh, you were covering the military, and I wasn't being sued by Mike Flynn back then. It's great. So
different time.
Yeah, but the book's an expansion of your award-winning podcast, Southlake, which I used to promote for you quite a bit, and you titled it They Came for the Schools. And while reading it, I learned that you've actually got a little double entendre there. There's a baked meaning in that title. You know, when you say They Came for the Schools, what did you mean with basically two meanings to that, actually?
Well, so maybe more than two meetings. I focused this book in this town called Southlake, Texas. It's a suburb that's affluent, mostly white, but growing more diverse, right?
Yep.
And the thing that everybody told me when I'd ask them, why did you move to Southlake? I got a variation of the same response. They came for the schools. Right. That's why these suburban school districts are a contested space. It's what draws people to the communities trying to get a good education for their kids. But I also was hearing at that time from folks like former Texas GOP chairman Alan West, who was telling supporters, while you all weren't paying attention for the last 30 years, progressives, the woke left, has been quietly taking control of your school districts, just like Hitler did in Nazi Germany, to impose this leftist ideology on your kids. The woke left came for your schools. And now in the last couple of years, we've seen just an incredible amount of political organizing by the Christian conservative right in America to push DEI out of classrooms and to impose a Christian conservative worldview. And actually the book in the background in the opening clip there fits into all of this, because that's the kind of content that conservatives are wanting to put into schools, these books by conservative commentators.
Right. The Brave books came out of this whole thing, right? That their own style of book that sort of, and that's why I think it's so insidious about like the Princess and the Pup. It sounds good, but imagine the content in this to replace the other ones. And
when you buy that book, by the way, I just looked it up. Brave Books will give you a free Joe Biden chew toy to make fun of Biden's dog as part of like, here's your gift for your kid.
Wow.
Here's a chew toy making fun of Joe Biden's, German Shepherd.
Wow.
So
I may buy it just to have it so I can light it on fire. What I found, and I lived in Richmond, Virginia at the height of the BLM protests. They were protesting the sort of where a lot of it was ground zero in a lot of ways with the Robert E. Lee statue. Yep. And I lived down the hill from the Confederate Memorial on top of Church Hill. So I knew all these. I saw it in real time. I was there walking my dog one day when there was these folks from South Carolina drove in armed and surrounded the monument and were power washing this public monument because they'd sprayed graffiti on it. I proudly called the cops on them and told the guys, I dare you to pull that gun on me. And it was insane, right? But, a lot of us involved in this battle kind of seen that creeping insanity. And what I love, you mentioned a little bit, that opening scene, that prologue of the book, you literally pinned a date on it, that what is it that tipped you off on July 3rd, 2020, that something was going on?
Yeah. So, summer of 2020, some of us have tried to forget this, but what was going on that summer was, it was the middle of the pandemic, backlash to pandemic safety measures, and nationwide protests for racial justice after George Floyd's murder. I was living in a suburb outside of Houston called Timberlake Estates, little subdivision we didn't have sidewalks. Yeah. However, my wife handed me her phone and said, look at this in our neighborhood Facebook page.
Oh, God.
One of the neighbors was warning that he saw Antifa buying ammo at the neighborhood sporting goods store. And another neighbor chimed in. They're probably planning their attack for the 4th of July to hide it under the cover of fireworks. Then the original poster came back and was like, here's the statute that says, when these protesters come, you can run them over with your car. You're allowed to do that under the law in Texas. And I just remember thinking and telling my wife, what the hell is happening? This is why are my neighbors in this little subdivision preparing for combat? And so I set out to tell a story about how these divisions that are tearing apart our national politics was really tearing apart local communities. Just like you were saying in Richmond, in the suburbs as well. And it just so happened that as I was pursuing that story, it became clear that, the real battlefield was emerging inside the public school systems in the suburbs.
Yeah. What a bizarre thing, right? That the fear that these mysterious people in black masks are actually going to attack houses. It never made any sense to me, and we saw it all the time. And that goes into the schools. I've had several guests on, wonderful guests, talk about the Moms for Liberty movement and how their influence has spread. And I'll be honest with you, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, brother. I didn't realize it really all started right there in Southlake. That became not the model that others that followed, right? And the cast of characters in your book is shocking. It's all there. Christopher Rufo to extremist old NRI pitchwoman Dana Loesch, who lives in Southlake. And then, of course, you mentioned the lunatic Alan West, who's been a bane of my existence for years because we both served in Iraq at the same time, except I didn't get fired from any jobs. But what happened in Southlake, why is it more than just a microcosm of that larger movement? In a lot of ways, it's not just the microcosm. It actually is almost the birthplace, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what happened is something happened in Southlake that was happening in a lot of suburbs across the country during the Trump years. There was a growing recognition that in these majority white but diversifying communities, Black kids were going to school and dealing with racist shit in their classrooms.
Right.
Like kids making dumb jokes,
right,
using racial slurs. And the district, like lots of school districts, were trying to deal with that in 2018, 2019, 2020. They came out with their plan in the middle of, at the same time as, my neighbors were warning about Antifa coming to the suburbs, and Donald Trump was warning that Joe Biden and the Democrats were going to destroy suburbia. Folks in Southlake, in that political context, saw this diversity plan as the embodiment of that attack. They're coming to take over our community by brainwashing our kids with this DEI, critical race theory stuff. And so the community this was 6 months before, the school board battles really made national news. It was before Chris Rufo even went on Fox News to declare this war on critical race theory and to introduce the nation to this idea of CRT. And so as Southlake was waging this fight locally with the help of folks like Alan West and Dana Lash, who just happens to live in Southlake, and other powerful figures.
I was pronouncing her name wrong on purpose, I think. I think it's a mental thing.
It's seared in my brain.
Yeah, no, I imagine it is.
She's been recently talking about me quite a bit.
Oh, I saw that. She's not real happy with you at the moment.
But what happened was, because Southlake had those connections, their strategy, which was to form a political action committee, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, and run really aggressive attack ads in a local nonpartisan school board election, when they won, when they prevailed in their school board elections in May of 2021, the conservative media enterprise saw it and jumped on it. Again, this is like a few months after Donald Trump had lost the 2020 presidential election. And so Laura Ingram's Fox News program opened with the results of the local school board election in Southlake, Texas. And the message she was giving was, we're winning. We're rejecting Black Lives Matter. And then the Wall Street Journal editorial board ran a headline, Southlake says no to woke education. The Federalist ran an article that called the local school board election in Southlake this watershed moment, like the birth of a new Tea Party movement focused on winning back the culture wars in schools. And so what we saw was the national political groups, people like Steve Bannon, saw what happened and said, let's copy this everywhere. And Steve Bannon's case was, the path to saving America runs through the school boards. And so we're going to do what Southlake did. We're going to win. We're going to run on this critical race theory issue. And in the process of winning the school boards, we'll win back the white suburban voters who don't like Trump. We'll win back Congress. We'll win back the White House. And so the whole conservative media apparatus, like the whole conservative movement, organized itself in the years that followed around these school board culture war issues, which is why Brave Books was created not long after that, and they've been trying to push, like, they have books like Dana Lash has a book with Brave Books about a gorilla that is fighting against gun control or something, and they have a book about critical race theory, More Than Spots and Stripes, about cheetahs who are like divided over. I don't think cheetahs have spots. I didn't read it close enough to understand what was going on with that. But the whole movement built itself around waging these fights at the local level to win up the chain.
Yeah. And it's amazing because I now live in suburban St. Louis, Missouri, and I've watched these last 3 years as hysteria. It started with COVID closures, right? A lot of this did. Then the Black Lives Matter protests, but it's continuously morphed to more extreme, like you said. And my partner's school, my girlfriend, her district has, so if you're familiar with St. Louis, the center graded for a lot of the desegregation issues after Brown v. Board of Education. My own school, as growing up here in Kirkwood, Missouri, my elementary school was closed, and I was actually bused to a more diverse school because my school was all white. So this is the backdrop of St. Louis in a lot of ways. And so there are kids from the St. Louis city, and one of these agreements, they're allowed to go to schools in the county. They can pick a school. And so you have African-American kids coming all the way out to, I won't name the school, far west St. Louis County. And in support of that, as you mentioned with your school, they had these diversity programs. They had a diversity officer. They had specific support programs for these more diverse kids. We also have a very large immigrant population moving here. A very large Muslim population has settled in the area of all places. So sure enough, we have conservatives take over. What I'll call conservatives, do air quotes when I say conservative. They took over. They immediately disbanded the diversity support programs, fired the lady who was in charge. I think she forced her to quit. Everything to help these kids. So you followed that arc from, COVID denial, COVID, all the way to where we are now, where anti-LGBTQ, it goes so much further than even DEI at this stage. In a lot of ways, that's the arc that you've been riding all along, up close and personal, haven't you, in this book?
Yeah, absolutely. The schools have become a proxy for a much bigger fight, and the fight is over what is America, whose ideas are welcome here in public spaces, and what's the story we tell about ourselves. And so now it's very much, started as this anti-DEI, anti-CRT or DEI.
Right.
Then it pivoted to library books and LGBTQ inclusion, the trans inclusion especially. And then groups that have long sought to overturn the separation of church and state in America saw all of this as an opportunity. And so now there's this big push to not just get rid of DEI, get rid of LGBTQ library books, do the bathroom policies, but replace those things with a Christian conservative worldview. Louisiana just this week voted to mandate the 10 Commandments be hung in every classroom, and that's going to the governor's desk right now. Similar bills are going all over the country. Push to replace school counselors with chaplains.
Yep.
To guide kids on the moral ways that they should follow. And that's all of these fights are happening in the schools, in part because schools are where we teach the next generation about what's true and what's right and what elements of our history are worth remembering. But also it's, again, like it's a proxy battlefield for this much bigger thing over what the country stands for.
And along those lines, I've had several guests on the show in recent weeks talking about the growing influence of Christian nationalism in the country. They've been a big part of this battle in across the country, and a big part of Southlake. I got to tell you, one of the most fascinating things I found out in the book as I was going through it is that the characters that started in Southlake sort of travel through what's happened, right? Like you actually have a scene there. You're at CPAC and, Patriot Mobile, which was founded in Southlake of all places, which is, the bizarre Trump-loving phone company. It goes to this, you have an entire chapter dedicated in the book to the Seven Mountains Mandate. And that's an important part of this Christian nationalism thing, and part important what you're talking about with the school vouchers and everything else, which I'm also going to ask about later. But tell our viewers, I don't know how many Americans really know just what the Seven Mountains Mandate thing is, and of course, what is that all about, and how does that play into the story?
Yeah, the Seven Mountains Mandate is the idea, the belief that conservative Christians are called on, while they await the return of Jesus, they're called to occupy territory. And the territory they're called to occupy are the seven mountains of cultural influence. That includes government, media, entertainment, the church, family, and education, schools. Now, this idea, has roots in the moral majority and dates back decades, but it really took off in the early 2000s with this growing movement that some of your listeners may have heard of, called the New Apostolic Reformation. Not going to get into all of the details, but it's a Pentecostal charismatic faith tradition that is blending politics, conservative Republican politics, with end times prophecy and theology. And in 2016, the folks who have been leading that really rallied around Donald Trump as the fulfillment of prophecy, a King Cyrus type figure who would restore America's Christian roots and help. That's the government mountain that they were taking over via Trump. Trump's presidency and the way he brought people like Paula White, who are part of this world, into the fold, really unleashed this movement, and it's become almost a center of GOP politics. You hear Charlie Kirk talk about the seven spheres of influence, and bringing on Lance Wallnau, this Pentecostal figure who coined the term Seven Mountains Mandate 2 decades ago. He these people are being brought into the center of GOP politics. And what happened in 2020, 2021 is those people, newly empowered following Trump's presidency and following January 6th, they saw the backlash against critical race theory, and then the backlash against LGBTQ inclusion in schools especially, and saw that as God is calling us back into this school mountain. So you heard people like Lauren Boebert, who buys into all of this or talks about it, saying God, like praying for God to let us take control of our school boards and have his influence over the schools. And really what they're doing is it ties into this broader issue around church and state separation and what this country is about. They want to banish LGBTQ inclusion and people and identities, and elevate a conservative Christian worldview that says this, the Bible is what we're returned to determine what is morally right and good. And that is, like I said, it's escalating, and it's very much part of the 2024 election.
And that's what we're going to turn to. So let's take a quick break for our great sponsors. We've got HumanN with us this week and HumanN, who I just love. So let's talk to them real quick, and we'll come back, and we've got a lot more to talk about, obviously. If you've watched this show or follow me on social media, I'm always talking about that when I'm not in the studio, I'm either hiking, out walking, or working in my giant garden. And now that it's springtime, I'm toiling away out there almost every day. And living a more heart healthy life fuels all the things that I do. So I'm really excited to introduce 3-in-1 blood pressure support plus CoQ10 from Superbeets Heart Chews Advanced. Now, pair with a healthy lifestyle. The grapeseed extract in Superbeets is clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle just alone. Now, Superbeets Heart Chews Advanced supports healthy CoQ10 level, and that's an important nutrient for your heart health. Now, look, I'll grab mine, I'll chew them as I head out the door for my walk or into the backyard. I get a boost of energy. And you know what? For me, at my age, it gives me peace of mind that I'm being more mindful of my heart health. It's far and away my favorite supplement and easily fits into my daily lifestyle, which is a busy one, as you know. Now, this CoQ10 generates 95% of the cellular energy your heart needs, but it can decline with age, stress, and statin use. Things in my life. A powerful 3-in-1 formula for healthy blood pressure is what the Superbeets Heart Chews Advanced include. They feature grapeseed extract, beetroot powder, and CoQ10. And as I mentioned, there's no pills to swallow, no ingredients to mix or prepare. It's plant-based. There's no artificial sweeteners or colors. So find out how you can get a free 30-day supply on bundles of new Superbeets Heart Chews Advanced. Save 15% by going to getsuperbeets.com. That's GetSuperBeets.com. Thanks for sponsoring our show. HumanN is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And then on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, sleep, and even your stress management. Now, all you have to do is breathe into this device, your HumanN, first thing in the morning. You'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then HumanN gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it, before or after workouts and meals. So that way you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And HumanN will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Now, look, after 20 years in the Army, being starved in Ranger School, living on combat rations while deployed, I've had to learn really well how my metabolism is my body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And honestly, guys, as I've aged, I've become more increasingly aware of how I must balance my exercise and diet. Our metabolism is the center of everything our body does. Optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits for me, including helping with my weight management, improving energy levels, getting better fitness results, and better sleep. And I really love how HumanN gives me recommendations to improve my metabolic health every single day. Now, look, I've been on a macro management diet program before. I've tried all different kinds of techniques. I learned the key to metabolic health is through these many years is something called metabolic flexibility. And that's where HumanN has really helped me. It refers to your body's ability to efficiently switch between using different fuel sources like carbs and fats. There are preferred times to use each and how well you can switch places you on the metabolic flexibility spectrum. Now, after getting to know you through your breath, HumanN gives you a metabolic flex score that can track and improve upon each day instead of a set macro number you use without changing. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me and use code FRED to get $100 off your HumanN. That is LUMEN.me and use FRED at checkout for $100 off. I highly recommend it. Thank you, HumanN, for sponsoring our episode. And we're back. So along those lines, I know school vouchers, I think you briefly mentioned, is an increasing battle across the country, right? Not just in red states, right? It's actually going to more liberal states. I've actually had friends of mine who are fairly progressives, if you will, say that they're fans of school choice, and I'm dumbfounded by it because that effort isn't new, obviously, but it looked like it sort of like these other things you've mentioned. They sort of latched on to this movement as an opportunity, right? And that started happening in Southlake. How does that movement play in this overarching narrative too, that average, and maybe our average people are missing the connection between those two movements?
Yeah, I think the broader coalition of school choice advocates that you're pointing to is real, and that has grown out of I think largely due to the failings of underfunded public schools,
right,
over or especially in cities where overwhelming majority of kids come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and it's just a challenge for the communities and the schools to perform well.
Yeah.
And so you definitely see even progressive parents of Black kids who are like, well, I want another option. And that's where you see the rise of charter schools, which are hugely supported by some progressive funding. But what's happened around in the last couple of years is, conservative Christian supporters of school choice or private school vouchers have really pointed to the culture wars around critical race theory and LGBTQ inclusion as a chance, an opportunity to really push across their most ambitious goals. And so we've seen a dramatic rise in what's called universal vouchers or universal school choice.
Yep.
And Arizona was the first to do it, and it's spreading to other states. And this idea is, it used to be that these educational savings accounts or school vouchers would target, certain people of low income or, students with disabilities. But universal vouchers is anybody, regardless of your income level or your student situation. If you have a kid who's public school age, you can have $7,000 to $10,000 per year. The government will give that to you probably in an educational savings account, and you can use that to pay for their private school tuition. You can homeschool and just hold on to that money and let it roll over and pay for their college eventually. And people like Governor Greg Abbott and others have really campaigned to advance those policies by pointing to the public school systems and saying, even though Texas runs it, like Texas is a Republican-led state, their public schools are governed by the Republican state legislature and executive branch. His campaign has been, the public schools that I oversee are indoctrinating your kids with this woke ideology. So we need the school choice for parents to be able to take that public money and send their kids. And the way he pitched it was he traveled around Texas and visited exclusively Protestant, majority white Christian private schools to make the case, hey, you should be free to send your kids here on the public dollar. And that's really taken off. I mean, Florida under Ron DeSantis has expanded. I think Iowa and some other states have pushed this through. And there's some initial worrying signs out of places like Arizona where the public school budget is really strained. A huge percentage of the people taking these vouchers were already sending their kids to private school.
Right. Just a tax break.
Exactly. And so that's a big part of the fight right now.
Yeah, it's blowing budget holes. I think Indiana just announced that theirs cost them $500 million just the other day. Arizona, over $1 billion, if I remember correctly. It's just they're just destroying their governments, doing their governments, and then that's the problem. It's interesting. Turn to another part of that, though, another part of our future, and that's what's going on in these red states but I also can't help but see the underpinnings of parts of Project 2025. I talk about it a lot in the show. I'm sure my viewers are sick of it. It's cousin to Agenda 47, which are those roadmaps for for a second Trump administration with roots in all of this. Now, we just heard this week that Trump is appointing several of the architects of the Project 2025 to the Republican Platform Committee. So I expect we'll see a lot of these extreme ideas become official Republican planks in the next few weeks. What sort of policies should we expect to include that stem from the long road that started in Southlake in your book?
Well, I think school choice is a big part of Project 2025 and their education platform. But the one that I'll call your attention to tie it back to Southlake, the town at the center of the book, is around the enforcement of federal civil rights laws.
Okay.
And so in Southlake, after the school board took control, the Southlake Families PAC anti-CRT school board candidates kind of swept to power, ended up winning all 7 seats over the course of a couple years on that school board. They banned any DEI type programs and removed explicit protections for LGBTQ students from the Student Code of Conduct. But the original complaints that kicked all of this off of students saying, "Hey, I'm being discriminated against. I'm in school over my race or my sexual orientation, and the school district hasn't handled it appropriately." Those complaints remained, and so those parents took those issues to the federal education department, the Office for Civil Rights, this agency tasked with enforcing some of our bedrock, civil rights protections that were passed in the 1960s and 70s, guaranteeing all students on fair and free access to education, regardless of race or sex. And what's happened just in the last couple of weeks is the education department's Office for Civil Rights got back in touch with Southlake schools and let them know they're ready to negotiate a resolution, which means they found that some students' civil rights were violated on the basis of race and sexual orientation. And that sets up this situation where the federal government may force this local school district to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion training, or strengthen their code of conduct their student code of conduct to include protections for LGBTQ kids. All of the stuff that local voters have rejected as woke DEI, the federal government could force them to do it. That all goes away under Project 2025, and Trump has said he plans to abolish the education department. Project 2025 also calls for abolishing the education department, but in the interim, eventually abolishing it. But in the interim, they want to end administrative enforcement of these civil rights laws, to take that away from the Office for Civil Rights, make it strictly a DOJ thing, which basically means that unless there's a really extreme case, none of this would ever be enforced. And also in Project 2025, they say, if you're a school district like Southlake, where the Biden administration has found problems, you can disregard whatever plan they told you that you needed to implement. And really the idea is to return this stuff to the states, is the language Trump has used, the same kind of language he used around abortion.
Right.
Return the enforcement of this stuff to the states, which have been passing these anti-critical race theory laws and restricting the rights of LGBTQ kids in classrooms.
2 different countries. You were describing 2 different countries.
Exactly.
They live in a blue state or a red state. So, oh my God, this is a depressing episode. So, I try to, but by the same token, the book isn't. I try to end our shows with hope. Something of especially on these tough issues. We're approaching 4 years in this battle for the souls of our schools, right? As I mentioned already, I live in Missouri, and we just had school board races in April, right? And the good news is many of these extremists were kicked out. Where we live in the far west St. Louis County, all of them have been kicked out, and the one remaining is resigning because it wasn't comfortable for her anymore. We're even seeing a story. I think there was a story recently of one of these ladies in Texas who ran and discovered that none of the things she thought were true, right? And so we're seeing it. One of my favorite parts is we have a far right radio talk show host, like Missouri has a ton of them, and we are the home of Rush Limbaugh, where we got to start. He endorsed 13 candidates across St. Louis, and all 13 lost. So we're seeing real progress. Is there hope? Do you see hope that the tide is turning? I know you mentioned in the book some really terrific advocates who are fighting back and activists that are fighting back. I mean, do we see, I like to call them green shoots of progress, if you will?
Yeah, I can point to one that you just referenced in west of St. Louis, Francis Howell.
Yes.
Francis Howell, the suburban school district, was one of these communities that after what happened in Southlake, some parents there formed their version. They called it they called it Francis Howell Families PAC, and they won control of the school board, made national news by kind of canceling an African-American history, social studies course. But in this most recent election, a group of progressive parents and moderate conservatives who, anti-MAGA type conservatives got together, formed their own organization, raised money, backed their own slate of candidates, and we retook control of the school board. I'm seeing a lot of that. Yeah. And what's, Steve Bannon's theory of the case that they were going to retake Congress and the White House by running these issues in the local and suburban schools hasn't really proven out. What's really happened is if you're a Trump leaning conservative suburb, well, the Moms for Liberty candidates are probably going to do pretty well. And if you're a purple or more Biden leading community, then these parents can get organized and defeat Moms for Liberty or South Lake Families PAC. It's just taken the ugliest divisions of our national politics and pushed them into the local level. But as a result, in lots of communities, Moms for Liberty is striking out because their ideas aren't necessarily broadly popular with a wide spectrum of voters in the suburbs.
And what I've seen personally is they also haven't thought about, they're running for those reasons, but not the reasons to run a budget for a multi-million-dollar school system, handle teacher certifications, curriculum approval, and they're discovering that that's not what we want. The reason that school boards are generally nonpartisan is because it's hard work to run a school system for a lot of kids who come from different backgrounds and different budgets, and I think a lot of our parents, because I'll tell you, the district I live in, or my girlfriend lives in, is conservative. It is red, and yet they lost. And it was a case where the three more progressive, and it's not even running as progressive. They're mostly running as not fucking crazy, right? It's like we really just want to run the schools, do weird shit. Yeah.
The group in Round Rock, Texas ran on the platform of make school boards boring again.
Yes.
And they did really well with that.
Yes.
That was it.
Because that's what I want as a parent. I don't want, I want my kid just to get a good education, not come from a place that colleges go, sorry, that's not going to work here because you didn't learn about American history, real American history, or AP courses that aren't available because your state decided that they don't like that curriculum. It's like one of our boys just finished the World AP exam, which is one of the toughest exams you can take. It's available. So I was very encouraged by that fact. You're right. It's just normies now. It's just people just want, in the end, as parents, I just want my kid to get a damn education. And that isn't political. It shouldn't be political. And I think a lot of people, there's a backlash to everything in our lives have become political, right? We can all agree on that. And as a guy who does this for a living, and I'm probably part of the problem, you could argue, but let's not go down that road. I'm not going to drag this on for long. I know you're a busy guy. I think with back-to-back interviews, the most important thing is the book published last week. You've already been on the road promoting it. Where are you going? What are you up to these days? How can people find you? And more importantly, where can they pick up this great book?
This story is still unfolding. So follow my reporting at NBC News. I post, I'm still on that site formerly known as Twitter. You can find me there. And MikeHixenbaugh.com. I'll have updates on any additional book tour stops. And you can find that book, hopefully, wherever you buy books. Amazon, your favorite indie bookstore. Go check it out. If they don't have it, tell them to get it.
Exactly. That's how it works right there. Well, I love it, Mike. I'm so proud to know you. I've known you I've seen you, like I said, we've known each other for over a decade, and I've watched your career closely and with great pride as a friend. And so congratulations on the book. It is a terrific read. I tell all my viewers and listeners at the end here, I guys hear me from that every week, but I get great guests who write good books or otherwise. It's a very readable and digestible book. It's not technical in any way, but you'll see a lot of the stuff that you've experienced in your own communities through this narrative. So I really highly recommend it. So let's buy the book, folks. Buy the book. That's the only way to know. Mike, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Good luck on this one, and good luck on all your reporting. And frankly, I'm going to be direct about this. Stay safe. I know there's been a backlash on this one, as we mentioned. Dana Lash is doing her thing. So keep up the fight. It's always hard sometimes to be on the right side of history.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah. Talk to you soon, brother. Man, what a great conversation. It's just, I on a personal note, I just think it's so cool. I've had the absolute privilege to get to know so many great journalists, starting way back in Iraq, my first tour as a spokesman for the Army, where I was in Iraq, as a Cub public relations and public affairs officer in 2005, working with Pulitzer Prize winners and stuff, and then onwards meet these great reporters who are covering our military community, our veterans, like Mike did in Virginia, to where they are now. It's amazing to see them being award-winning authors and journalists, and we're blessed to have a media that gets it and does important things like this book. And again, you do not have to have kids in school to see this. You do not have to. This is the political fight of the moment. And I do want to pull that thread he talked about. Bannon thought this was the answer. They thought the CRT hysteria. They thought the LGBTs. It was all going to work. And we all get scared on our side of this puzzle because we see them coming for us. But what we do keep discovering, and what you hear from me every week, is the same. When we fight back, when we stand up when we organize, when we work together, when we pool our resources, we win. Right here in our own school district, the answer was that the normie, and I call them normies, I'm not even calling them progressive, they're just normie school board candidates who just wanted to go serve the schools and their kids in our community. When they band together and put themselves on a ticket of their own, not subtly at all, where their signs had all 3 names on it, they were giving out flyers with all 3 names, not saying this is the ticket to bring back normalcy. They won. They won all 3 of the seats that are available on our local school board in a very red district. Because look, no matter the thing, we have gone to a place in a country where we don't always see eye to eye on almost everything these days. But my gosh, every family wants their kids to have a good education. Every family may not have the opportunity to send their kids to private school or want to, for that matter. So even where we disagree politically, we just want our kids to go to school, have a good experience, have good teachers, learn, come home with their pictures and their handprints or their damn diplomas with a good experience. Just the other day, our oldest, my girlfriend's son, they did a cool thing because he grew up in the same district as he did from high school. They sent all the high school kids back to their elementary school in their neighborhood, and they walked through the school in their graduation garb, their diplomas, with their hats and everything, and got cheered. They got clapped out of their elementary school for graduating from high school. And their kindergarten teachers came back. They'd retired to visit them, see them, and the kids they raised and graduated. Isn't that what we want? And that's not political. That's not MAGA or Republican or progressive. It's just, I just want my kid to go forward, contribute to the nation, have a good life. That's where we agree on things. And turning schools into combat zones of politics isn't the answer, no matter which side of the spectrum you fall on. So buy the book, continue the fight, organize the grassroots of. I tell you this every week. It's as easy as picking up the phone to your local campaign. Chances are that school board race doesn't have much money. So your physical labor, your blood, sweat, and tears is as valuable to them as your cash. So with that, as always, keep up the fight. I love having you here. We've got some great new In the Hot Seats going up. I just had a wonderful interview you'll see this week, hopefully already, with Lisa Blunt Rochester, the congressman out of Delaware running for the Senate. I've got more coming up. I love that series. You'll see it accelerate with more videos on the Midas Touch Network. In the meantime, like, share, subscribe, sign up for our Substack. Sign up for the Forgotten Democrats movement. I'd love to see you there. All those things are the things we're doing to make sure this country stays on track, defeats this authoritarian movement, and remains the democracy for all that we deserve. With that, have a great week. I can't wait to see you again next week right here on the Midas Touch Network.